Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 12:04. Can I get everybody to rise and say the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you.
I like the sound.
Miss Tammy, can you do a roll call vote?
Trustee
Agendas?
roll call.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Trustee Bosker.
Here.
Trustee Byler.
Here.
Trustee Hill.
Excused?
Thank you. Trustee Manning.
Here.
Board Chair Miskowitz.
Here.
Vice Chair Oldenburg.
Here.
Trustee Ramsey.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Public comment. Public comment is the time on the agenda for individuals to comment on items that are not on today's agenda. These comments must be about public matters and cannot include any private matters. We will ask individuals to try to keep their comments to 3 minutes. By law, the district cannot take any action on any matters discussed during this portion of the meeting until such time as the matter is specifically noted on the agenda and the public has been allowed the opportunity to comment. In addition, the school policy 1400 states business transact at the board meeting will be limited to the stated in the notice of the meeting. Do we have any public comment at this time?
Yes. My name is David Smith. Tracy, Jim, wherever you're at.
Nope, sorry, that is on the meeting's agenda.
All I was gonna do was welcome.
Okay,
That's all I was gonna do.
thank you.
Welcome and thank you for a good welcome of what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anybody else have any public comment at this time that is not on the agenda? Okay, moving on. I would like to start by welcoming Miss Tracy to Knoxon School District number 10. And at this time, I would like to introduce the trustees. I am the board chair, Amber Miskowitz. I've been in the area for over 20 years.
I'm Eric Oldenburg, Vice Chair. I've been in Knoxon for about 11 years and on the board for just under a year.
Vanessa Ramsey. I lived in Knoxon for 4 years and former teacher and I'm very new to the board.
I'm Jim Byler, Fire Chief in Knoxon. I went to school here.
I'm Joel Ramsey, principal here in Knoxon and science teacher.
I'm Kyra Bosker, and I'm new to the board too, just a couple months, but I've lived here for 25 years.
I'm Annie, and I have been on the board for over a year, and my kids go to school here.
Good to meet you.
Tracy knows who I am, by the way, so she knows I'm not on the board.
And for the public, this is Miss Deborah Silk from Montana School Board Association. I would like to take the time to inform Miss Tracy that the interview is set up for approximately 1 hour with 11 questions to cover. We will be aimed for 5 minutes per question. Please remember questions of a personal or unlawful nature, except, for example, marital status, children, religion, political viewpoints, etc., should not be posed during the interview or outside the interview process of these types of inquiry could compose the integrity of the hiring process. Okay, order of business, item 3A. Can I get a motion to interview candidate Miss Tracy Anderson for the superintendent position?
I make a motion to start the interview questions first.
Can I get a second?
A second.
And can I get any public discussion at this time? Okay, any board discussion? Okay, moving on to the questions. Miss Tracy, What are your initial impressions about our district, and why do you believe you are the right leader for our school at this time?
Okay, well, first of all, my impression is that you've got a lot of interested parties and you know, people that already I'm noticing rave about the school, and I just I love that small town, you know, pride in the school where it's kind of a community center. I'm someone who had a lot of different experience. I grew up in a rural community. At that time, Big Fork was a real small town when I grew up. So I have that experience growing up, but then also as an administrator, I've been in several role settings, and so I understand the intricacies of a small school and how it can be very engaging with the community, and you know, that's something that I would love about it. I'm someone who comes from a broad experience of basically big town training with rural minded work, hands-on. So that's why I would believe I would be the right leader, is that I know a lot of current practices. I've got a lot of experience going to national conferences and being trained by some of the best in the business. I've worked right alongside of Marzano consultants. Robert Marzano wrote the book, The Art and Science of Teaching, which is one of the, you know, basis, kind of like one of the Bibles of teaching in education. And I've worked right alongside them to train people how to do curriculum work, and how to assess kids, how to look at data. You know, so I have that, like I said, kind of big town training, but I love this, you know, to put that to work in a small rural area where we can engage everybody in doing the right work and setting up the systems that we need to be really successful in the setting. So.
Thank you. Mr. Eric, will you do number 2?
You bet. Can you describe your experience in leading change and overcoming resistance in a school or community?
Type. So the best experience I can think of right off the top of my head is when I was in Basin, Wyoming, which is also a small community. When I came into that situation, they had not had a principal at the K through 5 level, and it was the high school principal that would just kind of check in on them every once in a while. So even the teachers expressed that they were kind of felt a little behind, like there's a lot that they could do to catch up with what is going on in education. And so I could bring my experience to that, and first of all, just listen to, you know, what do you want to do, and throw out some possibilities, like you know, here's something, you know, we could go down this road or go down this road. And the main thing that we did was incorporate professional learning communities to get a system for meeting together and doing what I just explained, examining the data, you know, figuring out what are some research and evidence-based practices that we can incorporate. And through those professional learning community meetings, we set up a multi-tiered system of support so that we were catching everybody, the kids at the core, instruction, you know, just the instruction for everybody, and then for the kids who were struggling and the kids who were really struggling, so that we had a system for each level where we would evaluate them and say, you know, not necessarily pigeonhole anybody, but just say what support can we give them, and find some real interventions that made a difference. So I did that in Basin, and you know, we set it up as a team. I just listened to everybody and kind of went, okay, I feel like this is what you need, and they went, yes, that's what we need. And so by doing that, they were in improvement status, which was the lowest rung in Wyoming, at not meeting expectations. By the end of the first year, we were partially meeting expectations according to our scores. And then at the end of the second year, we were meeting expectations. And with the systems I set up there, they've continued to meet expectations year after year. That was a few years ago. I've done the same types of things at other schools with great success. With COVID in the way, it's kind of hard to say what the data clearly said to that, but that's there was some resistance to. I can see that's part of the question. You know, there were some teachers who weren't on board with that, but I think working as a team like we did and using their ideas and things that they wanted to work on and improve, that helped others kind of get on board. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Ms. Ramsey, will you do question number 3?
All right. So give us an example of one, the process that you have previously used in developing a school budget prior to the presentation to the board, and then 2, approach that you have taken when difficult choices had to be made for budget reductions.
Okay, when I came into the situation in Milestone where I was superintendent, the clerk was leaving. He had formed the budget, and so basically for the year, I just needed to live within the budget. I'll tell you that we went through 3 clerks that year, and so a business manager / clerk. So it was difficult. I need to get, you know, what do we have, what and how much have we spent. So that was something that I constantly had to keep my finger on, is, you know, what, being brand new to it, what is going on here. Then with the business manager that we hired towards the end of the year, then we put the budget together for the next year. I kind of did that, did several things, mostly some training for myself, because I thought if I ever end up in that situation, I hope I wouldn't have that situation. You're going to be here forever? Okay. So, and we actually sat at MASBO and talked to each other. So I went to the MASBO conference, is the business manager organization, and learned what they do so that I wouldn't be in that situation again where I didn't know. Of course, I had the finance class, but once you really work with a budget, you don't really know. So I would just continue to grow in that area and help the district live within its means. And the grant writing experience, I have to add to that, that I've written many grants, some school-wide title grants. I've gotten every grant I've ever written. One of the grants I wrote was for $1 million for a school of 250 kids, so just twice this size, to upgrade the literacy policies, and then helped to write the plan for that literacy, not policy, but a plan going forward for that school district. So that's one approach I've taken when difficult choices had to be made. Yes, there's always that stuff that we want, and so there's lots of avenues to go out there and get the money and get some of those things that we want, not just the things that we need. And working closely with the business manager. Very important.
Mr. Byler, will you do question number 4?
In your opinion, what level of participation is appropriate for board members in both the day-to-day affairs of the district and in long-term planning of a district?
I think just close communication. If you have concerns, or if you just want to know, you're hearing things, I think it's just good to have that open communication where we could just sit and visit and go over, whatever the concern is, or what your plans and your thinking is. That's helpful to know. I will say in Milestone, I felt like I tried to keep those lines open, But I had a board that in the May meeting when they turned over fired 5 people, so that I had put up for renewal, and I was totally blindsided by that, and that's one reason I'm not there. But I don't want that to happen again, so I want to keep in close communication and make sure that we, address any concerns right away. I can't share certain information, like I couldn't say, here's their evaluation, let's go over it together. We can't do that. But, it definitely could maybe put some concerns to rest or work on some things that need to be worked on. So absolutely an open-minded approach, an open door.
Ms. Kyra, question number 5, please.
Describe your decision-making process and provide an example of a difficult decision you made that affected the entire school district.
Oh gosh. I mean, every day you make a lot of decisions. Some affect that and some don't. I'm trying to land on one idea. The way I think of this is that there are some decisions that are right now. You have to make that decision right now. Power's out. Are we having school? Are we not having school? And that would be a no. No, we can't have school without power. So very few decisions are that snap, that I have to make a decision right now. I really try to get all my facts. Part of my librarian background is doing the research and finding out what the decision is going to mean down the road and who is it going to affect. And so the way that I always think of this is with the end in mind, like what is best for the kids. And I like to also, when I work with the board, I like to also approach things with that. Like if we're worrying about something versus another thing, what we have to just kind of sit and think about is how does this impact kids? Which decision has an impact on kids? What decisions should we be laboring over versus ones that we shouldn't be laboring over? That's key. And I always go back to Basin again and think the board had a sign right on their board table. I like your name tags, but I would suggest maybe even doing, they had a little sign that said, oh gosh, now I can't think of the wording, but it's about student achievement. And I would also add to that safety and achievement, so that anytime people got off track, they could point to that sign and go, this is what we're here for. And so it was kind of a nice physical reminder of, we've got to put any, bickering or anything else aside and just focus on that. And so that's what I try to focus on. And I'm still not coming up with a good example, but I'll circle back to it if I think of one, okay? There's just so many.
Ms. Annie, can you do question 6?
What do you believe are the best ways for a district to improve individual student success?
I think going through those tiers, like I talked about, in a multi-tiered system of support, and making sure that you're just paying attention to each tier. There are 4 questions in a professional learning community model, and I don't know if are you well versed in PLC? Okay, then I'll go over. So the first question is, what do we want them to learn? So that has to do with curriculum, defining our essential standards. Robert Marzano says that if we taught all the standards equally to fidelity, it would take 22 years. We don't have 22 years with these kids. So we have to go and define what's the have to know versus the nice to know, and cover all of them, but teach the essential ones to, like, before that kid walks out of my classroom in the summer, I'm gonna stand on my head, I'm gonna do cartwheels, I'm gonna do anything I need to do to make sure that kid knows those standards. So that's the kind of thing that question is about. Question 2 is, how are we going to know, which means the assessments. Are we giving them the right assessments? Are our assessments telling us what we need to know? Are there any gaps according to the assessment data? So there's, so that needs to be evaluated. Number 3 is, what if they don't learn it? What if they don't know it? So the kids who are struggling, are they struggling? Is it a tier 1 problem? Did we not teach it well the first time? Is it a tier 2 problem where they just need some extra help? Or is it a tier 3 problem where they really don't understand the foundational building blocks to a skill, and we need to maybe have them evaluated for special education? So that's what that question is about. And then the 4th is, what do we do if they already know it? And I find that happens a lot, actually. I want, when I do evaluations and stuff, one thing I work on is, okay, so some of your students already knew that. So let's think about maybe what else I can help support you in doing for those kids who already know the skills. I started a gifted and talented program in Basin. That was another thing that I did there, and that was at the board's direction. They wanted that to happen, so we put together a gifted and talented program, and that addressed that 4th question partially, not always, but and then kind of branched it out to the classrooms, what we do for the kids who already know it. So I would say answer that question with those 4 questions of PLC that cover what we're here for, that student achievement.
Mr. Eric, can you do number 7, please?
How would you communicate and gain buy-in from key constituents on the district's vision, goals, and strategies?
Okay, is there a strategic plan in place, or there's?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say that it goes back to the strategic plan and evaluating with the constituents what they like, what they're happy with as far as achieving that strategic plan, what they feel we still need to work on. So we go back to the plan that the community made, and the teachers and the school board all together made, and make sure that we are working on that strategic plan, or if we need to tweak the plan, if things, or maybe we are finding gaps or something, that we need to take a look at that. I mean, I think that surveys are good, but it's more than that. It's establishing the relationship so that people are well versed on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what is behind that. It's that there's some research behind that says this is a good thing to do. Like literacy practices right now are under a big spotlight because there's a lot of science that kind of wasn't used in the past, that was always there, and now we're finding that students are struggling with literacy, and so we have to go back to, what does the science say? What is successful? What does the evidence say here works best with these kids? And so we can constantly be presenting that to the community through just different avenues. And as I've been Title I director in 2 districts, so that meant I was in charge of all the family engagement opportunities, events. So that's something I love to do. As a teacher, I always had, at least quarterly, had parents in for, maybe a little potluck, and we did a reader's theater or a play or something like that. And I would really encourage that kind of engagement with parents and families so that they can see firsthand oh, this is what they're doing. And when there's maybe something negative out there, they can go, oh, I know that's not happening because I was there. And, you know, so it's just somebody maybe venting, I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of how you get by in with relationships.
Ms. Ramsey, number 8. Okay. So how would you, number 1, approach staff development and support to empower teachers and improve morale? And point 2, involve the staff in decision-making processes to build trust and empower them.
So, number 1, staff development, I have a ton of ideas and, you know, pretty deep well of things K through 12. Like I said, I had national trainers and people come in, engagement strategies. I've had like 3-4 different types of engagement strategies, some really fun stuff, which I love showing teachers. The Kagan Cooperative Learning is one of them, if you've never heard of that. Another one is Ron Clark Academy is a model school in Atlanta, Georgia right now that is just thousands of teachers go there every year to see what they do, and because their scores are just off the charts. And it is a private school, but it's inner city Atlanta, Georgia. And so it's Ron Clark has written several best-selling books, not several best-selling, but at least one best-selling, and then several books. And it's just a school that you can't even imagine. I could go on and on about it, but very innovative, high rigor, and huge student culture that it would just blow your mind. And it just blew the lid off of my vision for what a school could accomplish. Their students go on, and like I said, they're inner city. They go on to prep schools from there. It's a 4 through 8 school. So some of them go to regular high school, but usually by the time they graduate 8th grade there, they're going on to the higher level schools. And I met a young man, the first trip I made there, I've been there 4 times, to just watch and see what they do. But he was on his way to go to Yale. He had gone to Ron Clark Academy, then a prep school, and then he was going to school at Yale, and he was someone you would never, ever imagine going to Yale. So, and their kids, they're so engaged in that school that when they do their summer program where they have thousands of teachers visiting, their alumni come in. I mean, they graduated in 8th grade. They're coming in on their own time during the summer to help do the program. Where, you know, there were, I think, 700 teachers the days that I was there, and these kids are the ones going, okay, this group, you go this way, and, you know, just kind of doing all the organizing. And so it's so cool that it's that great of a culture that those kids want to be there even on their own time in the summer and do that help for the school. So that's the kind of vision, you know, that I have, and I want to bring in some strategies, some knowledge, and combine that to help teachers just reach their potential. And we had a lot of teachers who, after doing some of those things that we took back to our schools and we started implementing some of these innovative ideas, some teachers were like, this was a career saver for me. I was ready to retire before this, but now I don't want to retire. I have all these great things I want to do. So that's that improves morale in itself, but also just giving them support to do that. You know, you've got a wide variety of teachers anywhere you go, and it's kind of like your students. You get in your kindergartners, and you've got ones they're ready to rock and roll, and you've got ones that don't even know their colors or how to write their name. And so same with teachers. I mean, some need some support, and so that's the way, you know, I boost morale, is giving the support I need to give. And then involving the staff in decision-making processes to trust and empower them. I think I kind of described that in my example from Basin. And you know, just to say that when we came back from Ron Clark Academy and several teachers went, we didn't just go, okay, we're overhauling everything. You know, just look out. We're going to blow the world away. We came back feeling like that, but knowing better to get that buy-in and to show them the pictures and go, look at this. Wouldn't this be cool for our kids? Can you imagine our kids doing this? And, you know, their kids are doing things like when they're asked a question, they stand to answer. And then they have to speak to everybody, and they learn speaking skills doing that. And so we looked at our kids right after going, it was right around graduation time, and we had kids standing up, hands in their pockets, chewing gum, speaking at graduation. And we went, oh, we know better now. When we know better, we do better. Let's teach them how to present themselves and how to speak to everybody and how to stand up and how to walk up to somebody and shake their hand and introduce themselves. You know, those are some things I kind of digress there, but you know, those are some things that when we came back, we wanted to do those things, but we knew that we need to build that consensus and empower people through, okay, this sounds really cool. Now show me what to do hands-on. Like, how do I start this in my classroom? And we gave them those tools. So I would say, just equip them with the tools.
Mr. Byler, can you do question 9?
Explain the evaluation process you would like the board to consider when evaluating your performance.
I think just a rounded evaluation that doesn't focus on just the superficial. We can get caught up sometimes on superficial, and but to really dig in and go, okay, so what is the outcome of what we're doing, and is it something that's going to be good long term? Because you're always going to have people that, you know, kind of have to be drugged along a little bit, and then you're going to have the ones that are kicking and screaming. But for the most part, if the majority is on board, you're never going to get 100%. So I guess I would just say, look at the bigger picture, and you know, you get that by asking, by communicating, like, why are you doing this way? And just giving your administrator, giving me a chance to say, here, there's a method to my madness here. There's, you know, these are the results I've seen, and that are proven results. I'm not just out there grabbing onto any idea and going, here, let's do this. But actually researching evidence-based ideas and, you know, finding out, like, what is the real story going on here.
Ms. Kyra, number 10, please.
Give an example of how you would handle a board member who claims to represent a sizable group of the community but continues to oppose most of your recommendations.
Yeah, that is a difficult one. I mean, again, open communication and relationship building. You know, I had that. I had this, you know, like I said, board chair that fired 5 people. And so, you know, obviously didn't express that concern right up front and say, you know, here's what I'm thinking. You know, I think this person needs to be non-renewed. I think this person needs to be non-renewed. You know, finding out, like, you know, what is going on here. Like I said, I can't share evaluations, but I can say, you know, I've thoroughly evaluated this person, and, you know, they're using some great strategies, something like that. And then, you know, also as someone who stays in touch with what is going on in education, then I could have advised them, we're in the middle of a teacher shortage here. We have 5 people not coming back and 2 that quit as a result of that. Well, 3 including me. But, because I did have a contract for the following year. But, you know, so how is that gonna impact a small town when you have 8 people leaving and you're interviewing people from the Philippines because you can't find any candidates in Montana to teach English, high school English, you know, things like that, that we can kind of, you know, talk about rather than wait till there's such a problem that they just make a unilateral decision. So, yeah, it's difficult when there's somebody that's not willing to work together, but I try on my part to build that relationship.
Ms. Amy, number 11, please.
I guess it's 2 questions. How would you approach your first 100 days on the job? How would you generate buy-in from staff, parents, and community members to build support, rapport, and trust quickly?
Just get to know people. One of my professors at MSU, when I got my master's in administration, he said to the class, he said, don't change anything your first year unless it's morally or ethically wrong. And I get that, but then I kind of don't get that. But anyway, I think at least the first 100 days, you just have to listen. You have to listen. What is going on, and what is the history here? Why are we doing the things we do? Because sometimes there's a really good reason. And it just depends on the community. There's no cookie cutter. And in education, every community is different and has different priorities. And so usually sticking with the strategic plan that the community developed is the best thing that I can do. But first of all, establishing the relationships, getting to know everybody and the kids. I like to spend the time with the kids. I love to be in classrooms. That's the best part of my day, being with the kids.
Is there anything regarding your application to this position on which you would like to assess your right to privacy and request that I make a determination about whether to go into executive session to discuss this matter?
I feel that your community deserves to know anything that's out there, but I would just say that temper that with, you know, there's people that I'm not their cup of tea and they're not mine, but there's, you know, and there's people that don't have the truth in them. And so, anyway, I would say that could be an open discussion.
Go to the next question.
Okay. Do you have
Everything
any?
good for time? Okay.
Nope. Do you have any questions for us?
Okay. Well, I'm wondering, you know, of course, want to know a lot more about the community. But what are you looking for? Like, what kind of things do you hope to see in your next superintendent?
Can any of us answer?
Absolutely.
Open communication. That's a big one for me.
Anybody else have anything to add?
Well, I have lots of thoughts, but I think I'd like to see a leader from day one. I think we are, I just think that's important. I think that the communication, building relationships, a lot of things you referenced with the board, but more importantly, the teachers, the community, and most importantly, the students. Yeah, I'll let someone else answer.
Okay, the students will tell you everything too. I mean, yeah, I listen to students a lot. So, yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
you can get a lot from them.
We can circle back to me and talk too much sometimes. But.
Yeah.
I think putting the students first, just like you said before, that's something that's important to me.
Mr. Byler, Ms. Ramsey?
I'd like to see students, treated equal.
Yeah.
Not certain ones singled out and stuff like that.
Right. And just coming from a background of parent who has a child that was on an IEP, and I think that's really important. I had kids that both, well, one in gifted and one on an IEP, so one that really struggled, and so I think it's hard for a parent, and it's something that deserves time to let them know what our process is when their child is struggling and what we can do to help their child, and the different options available. As Title I director, I've done that many times. Just kind of set up some individualized education for a child based on what does work versus what doesn't. And that's one thing that I've changed a lot in places I've gone, is what I find is a lot of times those kids that are struggling, if they're not on an IEP or not on an IEP yet, a lot of times they're just getting homework help, and that's not going to help them catch up. If they're behind, like my child was struggling and at least a year behind, they've got to have a program that will help them gain on that. You know, the whole goal to special education is to get them out of special education. And with my own child, I didn't always see that. And so I guess I'm kind of a champion for that cause, is we want to see them work their way out of special education. Very strong on special education law as well. I just have to throw in there, because in Wyoming, they have special education costs are, and I was in Wyoming for 5 years, but I'm Montana, 5th generation Montana. But anyway, their sped costs are 100% reimbursed by the state, and that means that they spend a lot of money on it, and they train their administrators well. And I went to law conferences in Dallas, a 504 conference, a Title IX conference in Denver. You know, these things that Montana teachers don't get to do and Montana administrators don't get to do because they spend money on it. And so I have that advantage as well as a parent who dealt with that.
So I think budget is huge. I'm hoping for a superintendent that doesn't just take a recommendation coming from the clerk, but works actively with them, helps develop a very responsible budget, and help to implement it, and that we are being, I guess, responsible financially. That said, the superintendent is also going to aggressively pursue opportunities to bring as many resources to bear for our kids as we can. So really going after grants and other creative ways to maximize what we can do for the students.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah.
Ms. Ramsey?
We get to be good buddies. Do you like gummy bears? Chocolate? Yeah, and I did take, now, yes, I have not completed the superintendent certification. I'm very close. They said only a few credits away, but finance, I've taken finance, law, and ethics, which are the biggies. And I would definitely come up with a plan to finish that out as well, and that's could be negotiated, whatever pleases the board.
Ms. Ramsey, did you have any
Yeah,
questions?
just one question, kind of circling back to the second part of question 8, just involving staff in decision making too. And I know that, you know, there's so much good professional development out there, in PLCs, and I know teachers already have a lot on their shoulders and struggle with that. So what is your vision for mentorship for teachers and for administrators here?
Yeah. Just show them the most efficient way to get that done. You know, without putting more on their plate, just build in these practices that help them just get it done and take some of the things, you know, that aren't getting it done off their plate. I think that kind of happens one conversation at a time, and lots of time to get them to know them and find out where they're at, and you know what they want to see, and then guiding them, kind of like I did in Basin, just and Guernsey, and you know so on. Just guiding. Well, you know, this is something we could do. This is something. In fact, in Basin, what was funny is I kept guiding them towards PLC and stuff. I have a great slide on PLC because it's of a rowing team. And then I have one of a marathon. I said, which one do you think is more like a PLC? Well, it's the rowing team because you know, if somebody's not paddling, your boat's not going forward. And so, anyway, I showed them that at the beginning of the year. By probably around, you know, the end of the first month or something, one of them said at a meeting, you know what? I think we should do PLC. You know, and you know, it was like it was their idea, and they didn't even remember the slide. And then we came back to it, and it was like, oh yeah, you told us that, didn't you? Tell us that. So that's the kind of the way I would engage them, is like in a way that it ends up being their idea.
Thank you.
No, can I add one more thing to answer the question? And that's, I think, building a positive culture. And so we've talked about a lot of the ways to do that, but you know, a lot of that has to do with working with the teachers, getting the training, getting the resources, having this buy-in, and hopefully that is centered around, we're currently redeveloping the strategic plan right now, so I think a great opportunity to interact in that process. But top to bottom, whether that's board, superintendent, administrators, teachers, staff, parents, community, all the way down to the kids, it's building a positive culture, or helping to elevate a positive culture.
I agree. I'm glad you see that. I think part of that is being just honest and transparent and humble, and you know, going, you know, hey, I screwed up. If I screwed up, oh, that was, you know, that was on me, and those kinds of things, and you know, just building that team and doing some fun things together too, just social fun things.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy. And at this time, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Okay. After this, would you like me to stay here?
Yes.
Oh,
We have the meet and greet after Mr. Jim does his questions, and then we'll have the meet and greet, and you'll have 30 minutes with the staff and 30 minutes with the community.
Absolutely. Okay. That sounds like fun. And I'll leave your questions here.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
I mean, I think if it looks like it.
Okay, Miss Sammy, I'm calling the back at 1:03.
Thank you.
Joel, did you start the one again?
Okay, and at this time, I'd like to welcome Mr. Jim to Knoxon
Thank you.
and introduce the board to him. I am board chair Miskowitz, and I've been in the Knoxon area for 20 years, and I've sat on the board for over 6.
Hi, I'm Eric Oldenburg. I am the vice chair. I've lived in Knoxon for 11 years and been on the board for just under a year.
Vanessa Ramsey, and we've lived in Knoxon, or Crab Creek now for 4 years, and yeah, I'm new to the board.
Jim Byler, I've been on the board for 2 years, and I went to school here and been back and forth.
Joel Ramsey, high school principal and science teacher.
Kyra Bosker. I've lived in Knoxon for 25 years and I've been on board for a couple months.
I'm Annie. I grew up in the area, and now my kids go to school here, and I've been on the board for a year.
Well, before you even ask questions, thank you for all the board members for what you do. I don't know if you hear that very often, but I know I've worked with boards for quite a few years that don't get a whole lot of thank you, so thank you.
And I'd like to let you know that, to inform you that the interview is set for approximately 1 hour. We have 11 questions to cover, and I'm aiming for 5 minutes each for the questions. And I'm going to start our questions off.
And Jim, just so you know, there's a copy of the questions there to follow along with you.
Thank you.
I don't know, I have a eye issue and probably can't read it anyway, so.
Question number 1. What are your initial impressions of our district, and why do you believe that you are the right leader for our school at this time?
Okay, thank you for that question. So I got here last night, on purpose, just to go around and ask questions and talk to the community members I could run into and everything, and was quite impressed. You know, I stayed down at your motel right, 2 blocks down the road from it, and met quite a few people, and again, asked a lot of questions and everything, and I guess to make a long story short on that one, I've been superintendent for 25 years. I've been retired, I told somebody in the hallway, for 26 hours now I've been retired, and still like what I do, and stuff, and really want to help a school district out, and knowing that you have a late opening coming up like you did, and most superintendent jobs start tomorrow, and that's pretty late to be interviewing, that if I could help your school district out, I'd like to take my experience and put it to work, and stuff. And I think the last 3 years I've been working for Montana School Services Foundation, and my big emphasis in that was health insurance, but my job was really to go around and help schools and mentor people, and I really think that Knoxon could use, possibly a superintendent or leaders coming from within, and I'd like to spend a year mentoring my replacement, I guess would be my goal on that one.
And Mr. Oldenburg, can you do question number 2?
Absolutely. Okay. Can you describe your experience in leading change and overcoming resistance in a school or community?
Yeah, 5 minutes. Okay, sorry, I don't want to minimize your question, but I moved to Eureka 20 years ago to be their superintendent. It was kind of a controversial job that I walked into, and I actually moved there because my son was a sophomore in high school, and I moved there for 3 years to get him through high school, and thought that would be good retirement. Well, 17 years later, I'm still in Eureka because change was occurring in the school district, and I again loved what I was doing, and stuff, and it just kept going and going and going, and got through. I think the biggest change was the COVID years, and I'm sure your district struggled the same way our district struggled up there. Is nobody had directions on how to run a school during a global pandemic, and we all did our best, and we all made mistakes doing it. We all did things in our heart that were best for our communities and our students and our schools and everything like that. So I think my biggest overcoming resistance would be surviving COVID, and then doing a couple years after that. I guess my thought on the couple years after is I don't want to go out during COVID. I want to go out with a normal school year, and sorry, there's no such thing as normal anymore either. I learned that. So I think my overcoming resistance, I'll use COVID for my biggest example on that. But again, what I liked about it is I had 35 years in the Montana teaching at the time COVID hit, and it forced me to go back to the drawing board and do new things and learn new things and try things that had never been done before. And it actually I guess invigorated my career and stuff on that, and caused me to want to keep going at it. So.
Ms. Ramsey, number 3.
All right, give us an example of 1, the process that you have previously used in developing a school budget prior to presentation to the board, and 2, the approach you've taken when difficult choices had to be made for budget reductions.
Okay, it's got to be a budget question, because I think that a lot of superintendents get tied into making 90% of their job trying to figure out how to pay for things. The reality of this question, I'm going to pick it apart a little bit, and sorry if and this is from too many years of being superintendent. There's this big thought out there that this budget is something that has so much variance in it. There's so many decisions that have to be made to run a budget. The reality of it is I'm guessing, and I haven't looked at your budget, but if it's anything like any other budget that I've looked at, 80% of your budget's already tied to salaries, and another 10% tied to utilities and things like that, which means you really don't get a whole lot of choices except for maybe on the 10% of the budget. And I think a lot of times we make too big a deal on that, the 10%. So I think the problem is with declining enrollments and state funding and everything else, is our budget a lot of times isn't what we can do with the money. It's how we survive with what's left of our money. Again, I would be walking into a 1-year situation in this job. So I guess the way the budget would be approached on this one is getting together the stakeholders, whether it be the board, staff members, and taking and looking at what our priorities are and how we can fund certain things. A lot of schools get hung up with having to cut, and Eureka was like that too, and I hate to keep using my latest example, but we managed to run a school district there where nobody knew what was being cut, you know, and stuff. I mean, I think the one thing that we ended up cutting was high school study halls. That was the only visible thing that was ever cut. I think one of the things you need somebody to come in and look at and identify if there's any waste in your budget to start with, things that you're paying too much for, services you're paying too much for, things that you could survive with, and get that so that when you're looking at the pot of money that can be divided up, you have a pretty good understanding of what that is. And I'll use my history for this. Every single decision on whether budget or whatever, you have to sit there and ask her if that's what's best for kids, you know, and stuff. And I think that's the one thing that we really have to look at is are we doing what's best for kids, you know, when it comes down to that. So I guess I'm talking around that question because of the fact that every single person's budget, every school district's budget is going to be different. But I truly believe is especially this time of year. I mean, you're on a pretty short deadline to get next year's budget out for a beginning of August meeting, you know, on that. So, so the first thing would be to do is to line item by line item, figure out. I mean, staffing is already set for next year, pretty close to set for next year. And see what we can do with that leftover 10% of the budget from there. So again, it's not going to be somebody from the outside coming in and just saying this, and that. It's going to have to be a stakeholder decision on that. So, and to tell you the truth, sitting right here, right now, I don't know who the stakeholders are. You know, that would be the first week of any new job on that, is to determine who that is.
So I do a follow-up.
Yep.
You had referenced the 1 year. Is 1 year the maximum you'd be willing to consider?
No, I probably need to explain this. So I'm retired. You know, I've got 40-some years in Montana teacher retirement. House Bill 349 this year allowed people to come back and work full-time, retired if the school district can make a couple there's a couple qualifiers for me to be hired. One, you can't have any other qualified applicants, or that person, you can't have somebody that could be accepted. So I could only do that job for 1 year and stay retired. Now, I believe that this is the first year that this is coming up where you can actually do it full time and be retired. I truly believe that there's the possibility of having another emergency hire down the road and stuff. So, but right now, as per the way the laws are written, and Deborah can set you straight on that a little bit more than I can on that too, is that as long as I'm retired, I could only do it for 1 year right now.
And not to get off track, but they did expand that. It used to be cap of 3 years, and now it's a total of 5. But
However, you have to qualify for an emergency situation every single year. So if you're going to renew that or whatever, and like I said, it may be a test case coming up on how that's going to work or not. So that's where I'm on that, you know, and stuff. And I'll be honest, I'm not a one and done type person. However, with my retirement and everything else, my goal right now is to help a school district, and I will help a school district next year. So,
Thank you.
did that clarify it at all? I'm sorry, it is a little confusing because there's another way you can work and retired, and that's by doing it for half your salary and stuff like that too. But I guess what I'm saying is I can't afford to give up my retirement to work for you, so I'm going to stay retired on that. So, but I could work for you for a year at least.
Mr. Byler, number 4, please.
In your opinion, what level of participation is appropriate for board members in both the day-to-day affairs of a district and in long-term planning of a district?
Okay, interesting question too, and I like that question because that's going to be completely individualized by schools too and stuff like that. I like board members to take an active role in the community and the school, you know, and stuff. I invite board members into my office as often as they want to come in and visit about things individually and to get to know the decisions they're making and get information on that. I had this conversation, same conversation in the hallway right before this, because in a small community, you look at this group of people and you know everybody on staff too and everything. And one of the things that I would really like to instill in the staff is, if you have good things to say about the school, you go out and tell everybody. If you have bad things to say about the school, come tell me first, you know, and stuff, so I don't get blindsided by board members on that one. So and believe me, I've come from that. My last two soup jobs were Brady and Eureka, and it was the same demographics in both of those. Everybody knew everybody. That's the way the towns work, you know, and stuff. But truly, I will instill on staff that if they have a comment about the way the school is being run and they talk to a board member, please make sure that I was in that loop and preferably first on that one. So, and I am, I guess, adamant on that part of it. Good things about the school, you go tell everybody all the time you want, but, you know, and social media becomes another one on that one too, you know, and stuff that post everything good about the school and come talk to me about the bad things.
Ms. Kyra, number 5.
Describe your decision-making process and provide an example of a difficult decision you made that affected the entire school district.
I guess reductions in force is the most difficult decisions I've had to make, because of the fact that there's always a person's face tied to it and everything. And I'm a people person, you know, and stuff. And that's why I said that even your budget is 80% people, you know, and stuff. And I tend to build relationships, and that is something very valuable to me. So by having to cut a position that had a face attached to it, it's been a very difficult decision. And I come from small schools and stuff, and so when you're cutting one position, you're cutting a family member when it comes down to it too on that, and that's been difficult. However, I haven't had to do it as often as I thought I did. I know when I walked into Eureka, the guy before me had to riff, I think 11 classified staff the day before I got there, and we only riffed 2 people for the next 17 years, you know, and stuff on that. But it's still, those 2 people, you know, I mean, it hurt. That was a very difficult decision, so.
Ms. Annie, number 6.
What do you believe are the best ways for a district to improve individual student success?
You know, I think that the number one thing is to have students and staff loving coming to school and stuff. And the reason I work for a health insurance people the last couple of years is because of the fact that I developed a wellness program in Eureka that was second to none, where when I first got there, and I was the same way, you know, and stuff, my life was being run by stress and stuff, and it's like, thank God it's Friday type thing and stuff, and that philosophy changed, you know, and stuff, and I can talk for 2 hours on this one, but I'll try to limit it. My philosophy is to put staff and people first. You have to put yourself first before you can become a good teacher and stuff. And every teacher in the district has been trained to take care of everybody else before they take care of themselves. So my philosophy for that one would be, you can improve that by taking care of yourself and being a better person that way, with a wellness program. But you can also do it with students, you know, and stuff. And that's what's been contagious. And I'll use Eureka for example that way too. We used to have a huge attendance problem on Mondays, you know, and stuff on that, whether it be staff or teachers or whatever. In the 7 or 8 years that my philosophy was put yourself first, that changed significantly, and I can produce numbers that show that, but I can produce a job satisfaction survey that showed that Eureka staff was the happiest staff, and not just the schools in the Pacific Northwest, by a significant amount and stuff, and it was all tying things to wellness and taking care of yourself, you know, and everything. And believe me, I still have teachers that'll call me up and fight me over that. I can't. I don't have time to take care of myself because I have all these kids. We're all parents, you know, we're teachers, we've got a million other roles in life, but once we start taking care of ourselves first, and I'll use myself for an example. I was dying from stress. I was off the chart. My doctor had told me I had to do a bunch of things. I was 250 pounds. I couldn't go up a flight of stairs without practically dying, and it already brings tears to my eyes sometimes to tell the story. And I got to the point where, you know, I needed to do something. I had 2 kids, they deserved better, I started riding a bicycle, you know, and stuff, and I rode to work and back and just do little things like that. Well, it got to the point where it was contagious, and then I started riding my bicycle after work every night, and by the time I got home, and then I started riding 50 miles every night and 100 miles on weekends, and it was a compulsive type thing probably too, but it was amazing that by the time I got home, there was no stress left in my life, and believe me that you talk to, I think if you talk to 99 out of 100 school superintendents, they would tell you they have a stressful job. Well, I didn't have a stressful job. I had a challenging job, you know, and stuff, and everything. And so I got to the point where, you know, wellness was the most important thing, and it still is and stuff. And so I guess that's one of the things to change the school culture is I'm going to come in with the idea that teachers need to take care of themselves first, and students will reap the benefits of it. We started walking clubs and everything like that, where, you know, teachers would walk at lunch every day, and the next thing I knew, all the kids were walking with them and stuff. And I truly believe that changed. I know I'm kind of veering off a little bit. Changed the culture of the school, where kids loved coming to school. All of a sudden, our sports programs had standing room only in them. We went from very small programs to big programs. I'm sorry, when I walked into Eureka, there wasn't a state championship banner hanging on the wall. When I left, there were 11, you know, and stuff. And those are the kind of things that, by building that culture, kids bought into it too. And I also used the example that I had to look around to find clothing that I owned today for an interview that didn't have a Eureka Lions logo on it. You know, everybody in town, you know, we had the most recognized logo in the state of Montana next to the University of Montana, I believe, on that. And it was all, it all came, you know, from taking care of ourselves, building wellness programs, getting kids to love it. But, you know, I truly believe my staff love coming to school on Mondays and stuff, and I think if I could call any of them right now and ask them, I think they would vouch for that. So.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's not exactly a direct answer to your question, but I truly believe that I'm right on that one. So.
Number 7, Mr. Eric.
Okay, how would you communicate and gain buy-in from key constituents on the district's vision, goals, and strategies?
Okay, I'm gonna change your question a little bit on that one too, you know, and stuff. One of the biggest issues that we had, in another school district was social media, and the fact that we could do everything wrong by a push of a button on a cell phone and never have face-to-face contact with anybody. And it was amazing that the number of times that something in our school was tried and somebody was hung based on something they thought that was shared on social media and stuff. And so one of the things we did, and I tasked my secretary to this, is every time she saw something negative about the school was to call somebody up and get them to come in and visit, you know, and stuff on that. And we didn't have a real high success rate. Most people would rather push a button on their computer and not go face to face. But every single time somebody came in and understood why decisions were being made, it changed the culture of our entire community pretty quickly that way and stuff. And so I truly believe that is one key thing. You know, I think social media can be huge, again, for promoting things, you know, and stuff. I mean, scheduling things, telling the success of the school and stuff. But boy, you get a culture where you're using it to try what's going on, and it's kind of scary to just sit there and watch it go by, you know, and stuff. And that's why we addressed it, and it was very good, you know. I can remember the one guy that was going to vote against every single school bond or levy that ever came by because the superintendent wouldn't turn the air conditioning on in the gym during graduation. And it's like, okay, and that was going all over Facebook that I was too cheap to turn the air conditioning on. Well, I guess your gym's probably air conditioned the same way my gym was air conditioned. When it's hot out, it's hot. When it's cold out, it's cold. You can't really do anything about that. But you know, and he came in and we talked for 2 hours about the building project, and he went out and was one of the biggest supporters for the building project. But it was too easy. It was too easy to agree with what you see on Facebook. So I guess my answer is don't ignore the negative things and address them, you know, and stuff.
Ms. Ramsey, number 8.
All right. So how would you first approach staff development and support to empower teachers and improve morale? And 2, to involve the staff in decision-making processes to build trust and empower them?
You know, I think that's what I'm here for, you know, and stuff. I truly do, and I think I've answered part of that question already. But truly, the staff development, Somebody coming in for 1 year from the outside probably isn't gonna come in and mandate this, and this, but is gonna come in and figure out the needs. And there are two different types of superintendents, I'll be honest. There's one that likes to come in and dictate everything and self-promote, I'll call them that, but there's others that come in and promote the school instead. And I truly believe I fall into that category, where I truly believe the superintendent's job is to make sure that the teachers, the staff, the maintenance guy, whoever, the secretary, the clerk, has all the things they need in order to do their job. So I think that would be the approach I would take, is what do you need to do your job better, and then figure out where the resources are to make that happen, instead of coming in and saying, well, geez, and it probably sounds like I'm that person because I keep using Eureka for my example. But I'm not gonna come in and try to turn Knoxon into Eureka by all means, and stuff, because this is such a unique, every town in Montana is unique, but taking a look at what your needs are, and stuff, and like I said, I already walked around last night for a little bit and to hear what the needs, what some people perceive the needs to be, and stuff on that. Obviously, talking to 5 people that are wandering around town might be a little different than talking to the staff and the school board and figuring out what the needs are. So I truly believe that I started out my last job with the first 100 days type thing. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk to everybody. We're gonna do this, and that. I think on a 1-year interim type position, that might be the first 2 weeks. And so I'm not gonna be 100 days. That's half the jobs, a third of the jobs on that one. So I think knowing what the questions are before I'm sitting here and giving the answers might be the take. I don't know what the questions. I don't know what the needs for this district are. I don't know what the budget are. I do know that it's a very friendly community and people like to talk, and I kind of like that. So, in fact, I think I was interviewed 10 times the last hour out there. I already have 3 people's names that can take my place for you too.
Mr. Byler, number 9, please.
Explain the evaluation process you would like the board to consider when evaluating your performance.
I would like open communications with the board, where if I'm doing something right, board members have no problem coming and telling me. If I have something that they don't like, they come in and tell me. I'm not real excited about the process that most school districts use, where it's once a year, we'll tell you what we didn't like or what we did like, and then we'll talk about your contract for the next year. Well, that could be a moot point anyways in my position, and stuff on that. So I would like to be evaluated regularly with open communications. And I'll be honest, I'll do the same thing back, and stuff. I'm not gonna sit there and not evaluate a board member in a private situation. I mean, I'm not gonna do it in an open meeting, tell you what I like and don't like about you, and stuff on that. But I would like that to be ongoing, where any board member would feel comfortable to come in and sit down and close my door and tell me what they think, and then for one, I'd like to be able to answer why decisions are being made, on that, and not just this is the way things are gonna be doing, but this is why I think that, and I'd like to hear your opinion, and stuff. I mean, you're the stakeholders, you're the ones that I listen to people that have been here, 13 years, 12 years, and stuff. I've been here for 24 hours on that. So you guys are the people that really need to do that, and I hope everybody would feel comfortable doing that. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it, I'm gonna do what I can to try to make you feel comfortable by calling you up and visiting. I used to, when I first went to my last job, I hand delivered board packets, and I don't mind doing that. Hand deliver them, sit down and answer questions. It's hard to run away and hide when you have to see me for that, at least. And so I will do things to build board, superintendent, school relationships as the best I can too on that. So as far as evaluation goes, please, I mean, if somebody doesn't like the way I interview, catch me in the hall afterwards and talk to me about it, and stuff. I'll tell you why I do things on that.
Ms. Kyra, number 10, please.
Give us an example of how you would handle a board member who claims to represent a sizable group in the community, but continues to oppose most of your recommendations.
I think the same answer on that one, and stuff. If you're opposing my recommendations, please tell me why, and stuff. I really like opposing views, and stuff on that. Professional opposing views, and stuff on that. If a board member's running around town telling, everybody what I've done wrong since my mom was pregnant, and stuff or whatever, I will have issues with that, and we'll talk about that. But disagreement probably is how change happens more often than not. And disagreeing with everything, I think I'm right, you think you're right, we'll clash a little bit, but as long as we can do it professionally, I really don't have an issue with that. So, but again, like I did with the social media and everything like that, if it's everything, you'll get a visit from me, a phone call, a invite in the office, lunch, dinner, I don't care what, and stuff on that, but I'm not gonna wait till evaluation time in January or February to say something about it on that. So I do like taking care of my own well-being and wellness too and stuff, and so if everything I've done wrong, and stuff, I need to know why, so.
Miss Annie, number 11, please.
How would you approach your first 100 days on the job? How would you generate buy-in from staff, parents, and community members to build support, rapport, and trust quickly?
Okay, I'm gonna throw the 100 days out and go back to the first 10 days, and stuff on that. I truly believe that listening is very important, and stuff, and listening, and then follow it up a little bit with understanding and trying to figure things out, and stuff. I truly believe that one thing you'll find out is building trust is something that's going to be easy, because I don't hide, I'm not going to hide anything from you. If I think something, I'm going to tell you and stuff, and I hope you're going to do the same thing on that too. I'm going to be transparent. I truly believe that my reputation is that way with honesty. I do know that I've worked in 3 different school districts now, and I would be invited back and hired in a second in any of my 3 past school districts because of the fact that I did build relationships, but I did build trust. I have to make difficult decisions. I'm not here to please everybody, and stuff, but I truly believe that my past history of trust will show itself very quickly, and stuff. It'll be open, and stuff, and there won't be decisions that the school board members don't know why something's happening on that. So if we could switch that 100 days to 10 days, and it's hard in the summertime because I won't even see everybody. The first thing I'm gonna do is get a hold of every staff member and invite them to come in and sit down one-on-one with me to tell me what they think sacred about the school district. And the second thing I wanna know is what the unwritten rules are, and stuff, because those are the kind of things that I was telling your maintenance guy, I inherited a building that was made in 1959 when I was in Brady, and it had 2 maintenance directors and this was about 2000, so it had 2 maintenance directors in 40 years and stuff. And the first thing I did was walk into the gym to talk to the whole staff, on the back to school days, and I walked in with my shoes on, and it's like, I thought they were gonna run me out of town because I did not know what the unwritten rules are, that you can't walk on the gym floor with shoes on and all this stuff. And so I got to hear that from my maintenance director who'd been there for 30 years, and he was right. I never wore my shoes in school again, in the gym floor after that again. So. However, to get even though, the first day that it was really muddy out or raining and stuff, and all the shoes were lined up there, we had a fire drill. So, I have to be up front and honest, that I didn't. Yeah, I got called on the carpet for wearing shoes, so I got even on that. So.
All right.
I think the community buy-in is one, and I hate having my back to anybody here, but I'm grateful for a turnout like this too, because I think that shows that the community is very interested in the direction the school's taking, and that. It'd be a little bit different if there was a crowd that showed up to fire the coach or the superintendent, and stuff, but I'm thankful for everybody that showed up, and the people I ran into, sorry if I ran into last night, had a million questions too on that.
Is there anything regarding your application to this position for which you would like to assert your right to privacy and request that I make the determination about whether to go into executive session to discuss this matter?
I'm proud of everything I've done in my life, and I like I said, for references and stuff, call anybody I've worked with, and stuff. I've got nothing to hide. I'll be transparent on that. So I can't think of anything, on that. So. If you wanna talk about my kids, that might be a different story. You know, no, it's not, I'll talk about them too, but it's not in a 1 hour interview, so.
And at this time, do you have any questions for us?
Yes, I do, you know, and stuff, I brought a book full of them, but I'll leave that aside, so throw out finances, cause everybody can fall back on that. What are the other 3 big issues that the school's seeing right now?
Transparency, communication, and follow through would be my top 3 if I had to pick.
I throw in morale too.
What was that?
Morale.
Are they fixable?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any?
I think one thing I'm very big on is continuing working towards always building more and more positive culture. A lot of the things that you referenced, top to bottom, board, administration, teachers, staff, kids, the whole thing, building positive culture and achieving outcomes.
You guys like what you do? The school,
Yes.
so here's my question, and please answer, how many people ran for the last school board election?
3.
For 1 position?
No.
For 3
4 positions.
Okay. So it's till death do us part type agreement, then you get on the board and so it's somebody's turn, okay. Well, the reason I ask that, because if 100 people ran for those 3 positions, then I would sit there in the back of my mind and put a red flag up there, you know, and stuff on that. If everybody's running for school board, something's probably wrong with the school, so on that, so that's a good thing on that.
Yes, sir.
Major maintenance issues, I mean, I see a brand new looking parking lot and stuff and everything, but I also know that, you know, I'm talking to your maintenance guy, you know, about little, I mean, he wasn't bad mouthing, but little projects that have big dollar signs to them and stuff. Does the community support additional money for those? I mean, if building bonds or levies, are those kind of things something that the community would, I guess with a 1-year position, it doesn't matter so much, but I'm looking at the way past 1 year down the road if I'm gonna take the job, so.
Honestly, from the looks I'm getting from our community that is here, I don't think that we would like to tax our community any more than we would absolutely need necessary.
It would be challenging. So with the assessed values of homes more than doubling since COVID, the burden is high, and that we're living in those times.
And so in 25 years of being superintendent, I have to run a levy 1 year. It was the last year that Brady was in, because I agree with that, you know, it's kind of a trick question, you know, and stuff. And then, you know, just because the school's, you know, struggling doesn't mean we take it out on the taxpayers. We figure out a way to do it instead on that. So.
That said, we have funding currently available for the roof needs work, and we're currently soliciting bids on that. So yeah, I mean, it's an investment, and I think investing in that infrastructure and the maintenance, so that we're hopefully prolonging the need for major things. But I think right now in particular, it's a tough time.
What's can I ask what, I mean, it appears like declining enrollment is a major issue, which is tied to funding and stuff too. Is there I mean, I drive up and down the road and I see building going on, but if it's anything like my last job on that too, is it lots of houses but not lots of kids? I mean, is that the issue? We're just getting older, or are people going other places? So.
It's a little bit of all of it. There's a pretty high proportion of homeschool right now. I think in part of that, I think is a lot of reasons, but part of it is certainly a product of COVID. I think some people going elsewhere, but also there are a lot of second homes in this area.
Is there an ongoing effort to work with the homeschool community and I look at things like your archery program, your sports programs, things like that. I mean, is there active, you know, working together with it, or is it polarized? You know, I guess is my question on that. Or some of both, so.
I think more
I
recent.
think we can work better with them than we
There's
have
been
in the
a great
past.
effort to work towards them, especially this year.
And
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey's been a lot focused on that. We did, we have a contract with Harmony now.
Yeah,
and I think that's a way to make some inroads as well, so. Absolutely.
That intrigues me, because I didn't know anything about that until an hour ago, and that absolutely intrigued me. The reason I ask, I mean, too, is I think I talked to 5 people last night, and 3 of them homeschooled their kids, you know, and stuff, and it's like, that seems like a huge number, but maybe it was just,
It's
look, I
gotten
mean,
bigger over
the
the
small
last
school,
few
or
years.
small numbers, or small statistic numbers, maybe it was just what I ran into on that too. So. But I do know that I do have history working with homeschools and not against homeschools, I guarantee that, so it's even things like the library is a huge service for homeschools when the next closest library may be 35 miles down the road.
I think working more with the homeschool kids and inviting them in to use our library and things like that would be great.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to take a 1-hour recess. Mr. Jim, I'm gonna have you and Miss Tracy, you can pick, since you're in here, I'll put you in this room. We're gonna have the community members in this room. You're gonna have your meet and greet with our community. And the staff, I'm going to put you guys in room 301 with Miss Tracy for 30 minutes. Okay, Miss Tammy, can we call the meeting back to order at 3:11?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Meeting is called to order.
And we are on item 3A2. Just 1 second, and I'll give you the motion.
What motion?
Not a motion, I need to read this to Miss Tammy so she has it. Okay, Miss Tammy. Right here. Okay, as the board chair and Montana Code 2-3-203 subsection 3, I have determined the right to privacy of the candidates clearly exceed the merits of public disclosure, and therefore I am closing the meeting for the limited purpose of hearing the employment reference check by Montana School Board Association.
Okay, are we back in open session?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, open session at 3:34.
Oh!
Sorry. Excuse me.
Always one of those kids.
Right?
Is that your kid?
If I could tell you.
Then we'll have some additional things, but that will
Okay.
get started.
Right now, I'd like to open a motion up to the board at this time.
Can we request that Mrs. Silk give us a quick overview of the process here for
Yeah.
before we?
Yeah, so thanks everyone for hanging out for the day. The board asked that I just sort of provide you with guidelines, and the board as well, in terms of where you go from here. So the way that this is going to work is, I understand that your chair is going to ask for a motion. If anybody's prepared to make a motion, that motion will be to authorize MTSBA to offer a contract to one of the candidates. Understand that I don't have any influence over the process. I'm only here to guide the board. They can do whatever they want to do. If there is a motion and if it's second, then you guys are going to have the opportunity to provide input on that motion, okay? What I always tell people, both in terms of the board and the public, that I would try and keep your comments positive. In other words, advocate for somebody in a positive manner, but let's not talk about why you wouldn't want somebody. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So once the board gets public input on the motion before it, then we'll bring it back to the board. The board will deliberate on that motion further, given the value of the input from the public. And then hopefully we'll have some consensus on which direction you want to go at this point in time. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm asking the board for a motion if we're prepared to have one.
And Mrs. Silk did help with language if somebody does want to make a motion. Can you remember these?
Notice I've left it blank, right?
Yeah, that'd be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
Oh, to offer blank?
Yeah. Okay, I guess I'll start. I make a motion to authorize MTSBA to extend an offer to Jim Mepham and negotiate with Jim. I further move that the board authorize the chair and the vice chair to work with Ms. Silk in negotiating the terms of a contract.
I second.
Within, I'm sorry.
Okay, within the salary posted for the position. Cursive's hard sometimes.
I'm sorry.
I second the motion.
Okay, at this time, public have any discussion on the motion presented?
Just go.
Stand up, say your name for the beautiful camera.
Bart Hayfley, we like your motion, and, Mr. Mepham seems like he has a wealth of experience that would be a big benefit to our district, and, we all would look forward to working with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussions from the public? Okay. Board discussion?
I think, you know, being a superintendent for 16 years in Eureka, Montana, whose culture is probably fairly similar to ours, says a lot. I was really hoping we get a superintendent that could hit the ground running on day one. Really looking for someone to work to help enforce a positive community, someone really good with finances, and just so many things he spoke to, I think, could be a great fit for the surrounding community, ultimately benefiting our kids. I think working with teachers and staff, working with the board, just across the board, very excited about the potential of Mr. Mepham.
I agree.
I think that he aligns with a lot of our core.
I think if anybody could bring back some homeschooling, it would be him.
Mhm.
He's got a pretty good attitude.
I like that he wants to look at our needs and figure out exactly what we need here, not what Eureka needed or what Thompson needs, but
Not
what we
comparing
need.
us.
That's fine.
Got a sense from him too, is very clear leadership and very well experienced. I appreciate that he wants to mentor staff and administrators and, seems very open and communicative.
Any further discussions?
I guess we should reiterate that what we know now is that there's a potential it would be a maximum of 1 year because of retirement rules. There may be avenues to look at extending that if that's what the decision was at that time, but the initial offer would be a 1 year contract.
Can I interject here for a minute too? Under the statute that Jim referenced, that 19-20-732, that allows a retired individual in this state to still collect their retirement. And they can do that, the law used to say for up to 3 years, lifetime of 3 years, right? And in this past legislative session, they extended that to 5. It is going to require, and I think you guys understand this, it is going to require for me to reach out to both OPI and TRS, let them know that the district advertised for the position. You did have 2 candidates interview one of them, and I'm not saying anything that's not public. does not have a superintendent's endorsement. Mr. Meppen is the only one that is really qualified to perform the duties of superintendent at this time. I've worked with TRS before, in getting these approved. I don't anticipate that there's going to be any issues with TRS signing off on this. But I will let you two know immediately if in fact that is the case. Also remember too, and I forgot to do it, I have my packets here. Any motion is of course subject to return of a satisfactory criminal background check, so. And I'll make sure that we get that process going ASAP.
Okay, Ms. Tammy, can you please take a roll call vote?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Trustee Bosker,
Yes.
trustee Byler,
Yes.
trustee Manning,
Yes.
board chair Miskowitz.
Yes.
Vice chair Oldenburg,
Aye.
trustee Ramsey.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
I make, I guess I can't.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.